On the Citi Newsroom today, we are assessing the government's directive to close all schools. Now, we are in the Laboni Secondary School to observe how this directive is being implemented. What is the state of affairs here? This is Citi Newsroom on Citi TV. We continue our assessment of the directive to close down schools by the government. So this is the Laboni Secondary School. Ordinarily, it's lunchtime and students should have been here in their numbers going out for lunch, but the numbers are quite few, and this is because of the directive that we all know about. What we are told is that the headmistress addressed an assembly this morning. Now, again, we were told that during the assembly, they didn't have to stand in rows. Instead, it was just a scattered group of people who were addressed by their headmistress, who said to these students to go back home and to the borders, to either move out if they can do that on their own or invite their parents to come pick them up. And that's what's been happening. Now, the classrooms that previously were occupied by the Form 1s and the Form 2s remain empty. Now, the classrooms occupied by the Form 3 students, however, of course, are still occupied because the directive is for them to remain and write their examination or prepare for the examination. Tricky thing though, observing the classrooms, they are preparing for examination. You may want to compare notes, you may want to study from the same book, solve questions together. You may want to share the same calculator, for instance. You may want to confer with each other, have group discussions. How do you address this particular challenge while also being mindful of spreading up? So that would be the tricky part as this directive comes into force, which directive we do not know when it would be ending, except to say that at least in the next 4 weeks or so, the Form 2 students would be away, the Form 1 students would be away, the boarding Form 3 students would be here. Well, parents are here in secondary school, various secondary schools which are boarding to pick up these students. When did you hear about the news that the schools have been closed down?
Okay, I heard it only this morning.
Is your son in Form 1 or Form 2?
Form 2.
Yeah. So what's going to happen now that he's going home for like a month at least?
Okay, actually, I was a former teacher myself, and so I could handle him in the house for that period of time they are going to stay.
Well, the secondary school students, Form 1s and Form 2s, have packed out of school as per the presidential directive, except the Form 3 students who have been given special dispensation. Now, the directive also covers universities. We've come to the University of Ghana on the Citi Newsroom for Citi TV to see the situation, what is happening. Have students gone home? Are students planning to go home? What is the state of affairs? And I've just invited here, if you could join me, the PRO of the Students' Representative Council of the University of Ghana, Mr. Daniel Oserekun. Is that correct?
Yeah, right.
Welcome to Citi Newsroom.
Thank you, Omar.
What is happening following the announcement by the president last night?
So far, the school has officially been closed in relation to a communique released by management this afternoon, which communicated that the school has officially been closed down and all other details will be provided. So as it stands now, officially the school has been closed.
What is the mood amongst the students' population like since the information came out that you have a case here on campus?
I think generally there was a lot of panicking in the system.
Do you know if many students have left school or students are still in school?
Students are still in school, but the point is they are not going out of their rooms. For instance, when you come to my hall, there are a number of students in the hall, and on my floor, a number of students, on there. But the fact is they are not going out. Okay. Me, for instance, since yesterday, this is the time I'm going out. Okay. So there are a number of students on campus, but because we are all trying to be safe, we don't want to go out for now. But students are on campus, even though we have some going out.
Thank you so much, and that is evident in the pictures we are seeing on the street. It looks like the school has been abandoned or the university has been abandoned. Lots of the streets are having fewer vehicles. Parking lots have fewer vehicles, and students are seldom seen. When the president issued the sweeping directives on public gatherings, it did not affect only secondary schools or universities and so on. It has also affected all public gatherings, including religious centers. Muslims pray 5 times every day. Often it's supposed to be a congregation prayer in a mosque. And then on Friday, they have the bigger prayer, which is called the Jummah prayers. Now, Christians would have theirs on Sunday or Saturday, depending on which faith. What we have come to do is to come to the Medina Central Mosque and assess the situation. Have Muslims understood this directive from the president? How difficult or easy is it going to be to adhere to this particular rule? How challenging is it going to be for you?
Because looking at it, as for the prayer, our prayer doesn't allow us to. We have to be in the safu properly.
In a congregation.
You understand? It should be. We should observe the prayer in the congregational, manner. But then the coronavirus, the approach is one us to do. We can, if we want to go by it, we cannot observe the prayer congregationally, and then particularly the way we stand in the safu.
Which is the rule.
Which is just the rule. It will be difficult for us to do that. And we're looking at, I call it faith and contemporary or worldly issue. We cannot defy that of our faith against this one, even though we know death is inevitable. You understand? We understand death is inevitable. But then, we can't say because of coronavirus, we won't do what Allah ask us to do.
But you also be defying the authority of the land. The president has said that.
We are not saying, we are not going to defy the president. I mean, even the president could be at the Jubilee House and still could be attacked by coronavirus because he lives with people. Okay. You understand?
So you mean that when you go to pray, it will be difficult or impossible for you to spread apart?
As for spreading apart or giving a distance, it will be difficult because it's impossible.
Well, that's a tricky one. We'll be possibly entering the mosque if we are given permission to observe how the prayers are done. But if you do not understand him clearly, in Islam, when they are ready to worship or perform the prayers, they're supposed to stand in rows and it's supposed to be shoulder to shoulder. And your little toe, for instance, the little toe on my left leg is supposed to touch the little toe on the person to my left. Now that's his right leg, and that is how it ought to be throughout the row to the end. Now that's how close as it has to be, and it's prescribed and it's mandatory to perform the prayers according to what the Prophet has instructed. Now it's going to be a conflicting situation considering that this is an executive directive. But of course, there are religious plans and religious positions. We're going to observe the prayers now, shall we? So you can see behind me, it's time for the Asr prayers, which is the third prayer of the day. Muslims pray 5 times or perform salat 5 times a day. The dawn prayer, the afternoon prayer, and then the late afternoon prayer, which is what is about to happen now. And as you can see, the queue or the row as it's performed, this is how worshippers observe the prayer. Now, this is going to be a bit tricky considering that the directive has come through. Now, the mosque is not filled. Let's make that point clear. There's just a few, dozen people, maybe a little over a dozen people who have come in, congregated, a few women at the women's section in the mosque who are also performing their prayers. As to whether this defies the directive or otherwise on public gatherings, we are not sure. But this ought to happen every day. If you don't do it singularly, you do it in a congregation, and per Islamic dictates, you get more blessings for doing it in a congregation. And that is why the muazzin would call for prayers and people would converge on the mosque and perform their daily prayers.